to. Even I don't know if you watched Reacher with I forgot the actor's
That
name.
Jack guy that
Yeah,
said he put on 20 pounds, he was natural. I made 2 videos on this guy. He said he was natural, and then he went and made a video and said he wasn't. And he openly admitted to it.
yeah,
He put
Alan
on like
Rickson.
20 pounds in a month. It was ridiculous.
Okay. And the other one that I thought was really great was, there's a lot of people who warn against people taking TRT or testosterone, but there's also a danger of not taking it, hypogonadism, and also people becoming like morbidly obese because they aren't able to conduct protein synthesis, whatever. They just have bad genetics. Can you talk about that? Because there has to be a level at which, like for instance, if somebody is 500 or 600 pounds, I actually think they should be taking Ozempic because otherwise they're just going to die. Like we're going to get to a point where we've gotten too far. The same situation here. Can you talk about this? Like there is also a danger of being overweight and older and not taking TRT.
Well, certainly for Ozempic, I think it's a valuable resource for people who are morbidly obese. I'm not against people taking Ozempic, although the research shows that they're losing 2/3 of their weight as muscle or lean tissue, rather than what it should be is about a third of being muscle. Like if you lose 100 pounds, you don't want it to be mostly muscle, you want
Right.
it to be mostly fat. So Ozempic, people are tending to be losing more muscle than they would want to. Another thing with Ozempic is that people lose their joie de vie. They have less desire for sex, less desire to shop, less desire to smoke, less desire to do anything fun. There's kind of a limited dopamine reward that's being noticed from taking Ozempic. So it's not something I would give to a teenager or somebody young, or I would certainly want somebody to lose weight without it. But if you need it, I would use that. Now, as far as TRT, I went to an endocrinologist, which is an expert in hormones, and he said he didn't want to give me TRT, but he says because your testosterone levels are very low, the risks of not taking TRT are worse than the risks of taking TRT. And so whatever dangers are inherently going to go with taking TRT, they were lower than not doing it. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. He prescribed me TRT. Now, if you already have high levels of testosterone and you take it, I don't think it's a smart choice. But if you have low levels of test, you're certainly going to feel better. You're going to have less risk of death and all kinds of problems by having your testosterone into the normal range.
Yeah, actually, that I'm glad you brought that up, Coach, because a lot of guys now, and you've called them out a lot on the channel, where they're like a lot of young guys in their early 20s, early 30s, they're going straight to TRT. As soon as they have some low T symptoms, they feel tired, they have less energy, they're going right to going to a doctor and getting a testosterone prescription. So with that being said, obviously there's a lot of negative effects of TRT that you warn against, but right now, I don't know if you've ever seen the studies, but men are having, like, the testosterone levels are declining. Men are having less testosterone than their grandfathers. I guess what's your kind of like prescription to those guys who are younger and like well before they need to take TRT, but they have low testosterone? What do you usually do for those guys?
Well, I encourage is for people to use the lowest dose that makes them happy. Like, I'm
Hmm.
not going to be a hypocrite and say I didn't use steroids. I used steroids for 10 years. I
Yeah.
was in my 30s. I used for steroids for 10 years. So I did that. Now, if somebody is 20 years of age or 25, let's say, and they say, I want to do TRT. And I'm like, no, you're too young. You shouldn't do it. Well, that's great. If they don't do it and that's enough, and I say, hey, why don't you use Turk Builder? Why don't you use Ecto Builder? Why don't
Hmm.
you use G Test? Why don't you use some products that'll help you build muscle? Use creatine, do something great.
Hmm.
But if they say, well, I don't like my body, I hate it, and I'm not going to do TRT, I'm just going to blast on SARMs. I'm going to take some Anavar, some testosterone, some Tren. I'm like, well, it'd be much safer and smarter to at least get monitored by a doctor and do TRT. So I see it as the lesser of two evils, so to
Hmm.
speak. And so I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say don't do anything, but I'd rather see somebody doing TRT at a low dose and be consistent with that in their blood work and get monitored than to blast and cruise as most people are doing in these ages.
Um,
Right.
Another question I have is, I'm along with it. I was prescribed gonadorelin, Kisspeptin, and then later Clomid, and then later HCG, and I found HCG to work like significantly better than the other two. And I was curious if you had any insight to like why that is, or how effective those things can be.
Well, I don't ever take HCG while on cycle. That to me is a post-cycle therapy. HCG can be used to keep your balls bigger or
Yes.
increase your load, if you want to speak that way. But I don't see it as a need. I'm not on HCG. I don't believe in taking that. I'm not going to take Clomid. To me, if you can't get by on just testosterone, there's something wrong with your prescription.
Mm.
So if you're on a testosterone dose that's so high that you need to take a Arimidex or something else because your estrogen levels are out of control, then you maybe want to look at your testosterone dose. Is it too high? Is your
Mm.
dosing frequency not often enough? Because I'm on just testosterone. And if I was on some other things, like whatever, if I was on a peptide or a growth, I would tell people like I'm not going to be dishonest. There's no reason for me to lie. I'm just on tests. I do 140 milligrams. I inject 80 milligrams every 4 days. This is how I do it. If I forget in the fourth day, I do 100 milligrams on the fifth day. This is how I'm doing my dosing. And so I don't think anyone needs Clomid or HCG or anything else. And if you do, I question whether or not that dose is appropriate.
Got it. So the other thing is going back to the fake natty thing. One of the things I think is both of our favorites is when you go off on Michael Hearn. It is absolutely hilarious when, like, dude, we're just like, you understand that some of the stuff you say when you're going off on him and your tirades, it's beautiful. And I was just curious because I just was listening to you this morning. You're like, I don't care that this guy took steroids. It's just how crazy he is going down this path of acting like he never did. And why can't you just be honest? And I was wondering if you want to talk about, I don't know, maybe Chris Hemsworth or the biggest of all, The Rock.
Well, yeah, as soon as you brought up Michael Hearn, I'm like, The Rock is the same thing. These guys are in their 50s and they look better than they were in their 30s. Like, what is even going on now? We're going to pretend that this is natural? Like, how on earth is this even possible? To me, it's at a joke level. And so with Michael Hearn, it's always funny because he likes to put me down. He calls me a hobbit, a midget, a dwarf, whatever he's calling me, making fun of me. Then he says I have a mid physique. He says I have a below average physique. And I'm like, imagine being the regular viewer and they see me, I'm an IFBB pro bodybuilder, and I have a below average physique. And so what do most people look like? I mean, Michael Hearn is more critical of me than most women are critical of men. I mean, 80% of men are below average looking. And to Michael Hearn, if I'm below average, then what hope do the average guys have?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Why do you think it is, though, that we're going to get to this point where these guys just will not? Because, Jay Cutler came out. He talked about it with you. He also talked about it with me. He was open. He's like, yeah, I was taking 16 IUs of HGH per day. He was talking about the steroid. He was talking about taking equipoise. He's like, I'm going to tell the truth about this now. And why do you think a lot of, like, still with some of these other guys, they're not willing to? Even I don't know if you watched Reacher with I forgot the actor's name.
That guy that said he put on 20 pounds, he was natural. I made 2 videos on this guy. He said he was natural, and then he went and made a video and said he wasn't. He openly admitted to it.
Yeah, Alan
put on
Rickson.
Like 20 pounds in a month. It was ridiculous.
Also, Greg O'Gallagher did a video. I believe he was talking about Alex Hormozi, where guys were clearly taking steroids before, and then in order to sort of like a pass, they say, now I'm on TRT.
Alex Hormozi is one of the biggest liars in the internet, and because he's a nice guy and he's funny, he always has a Band-Aid on his nose. People love this guy. He's so full of shit. This guy's one of the biggest liars. He put on 46 pounds of muscle in a year. You remember this? 32 pounds of weight in, I think it was 3 months, and it was like 26 of those pounds was muscle.
And his testosterone was in the 50s.
3 hours a day. He's so full of shit. Now, I don't dislike him. I enjoy his videos. I don't hate on him. If he wanted to collaborate, I would. But I'm calling him a liar. I don't believe anything this guy says.
Yeah, that's why we were talking about this before. Like, the first thing I'm going to do when I come on the show is be like, bro, I'm on TRT. Like, I don't want to get called out by Greg. You know what I'm saying? So that part was pretty great.
If you're watching this, I have a gift for you. Hit the link below and I will send you a private invite to my community for free.